Most people don't realize this, but the moment your life truly begins is not when someone enters it. It's when everyone leaves. It's when the noise fades. It's when the world stops distracting you. It's when you finally sit alone with yourself and feel something you've ignored for years, the quiet truth that you were meant to grow in silence, not in crowds. Happiness doesn't come from people. Happiness begins the day you stop chasing company and start enjoying your own. Because when you walk alone, you don't lose anything. You rediscover everything you were too busy to notice. 1. Spend time alone. To know yourself better. Most people think they know themselves simply because they live inside their own body, but the truth is very different. You only meet the real you when you separate yourself from noise, from people, from expectations, and from the constant pressure of being who others want you to be. When you spend time alone, you begin to see the hidden layers of your mind, the dreams you abandoned because someone laughed at them, the fears you carry because you never had a safe space to express them, the strengths you ignored because no one ever encouraged them, and even the wounds you've been pretending don't hurt anymore. Solitude becomes a mirror that reflects everything clearly, without filters, without masks, and without judgment. The world pulls you in thousands of directions every single day. People want your attention. Society wants your conformity. And your environment keeps shaping your choices without you noticing. When you are always surrounded by others, you adopt their emotions, their pace, their opinions, and even their insecurities. But when you choose to spend time alone, truly alone, not scrolling your phone, not distracting yourself, you gently peel away all the noise that was never yours in the first place. You start noticing what actually makes you happy, what genuinely drains you, what you've been tolerating for too long, and what your soul has been silently craving. In solitude, you reconnect with your inner truth. You begin to hear the quiet voice beneath all the external chaos, the voice that whispers who you are meant to become. You realize that you may have been living on autopilot, moving through life based on habits, expectations, and old patterns that no longer match who you are today. Spending time alone forces you to pause, reflect, question, and understand your own inner world. You see your behavior, your emotions, your reactions, and your choices with fresh clarity. You understand why certain things hurt you, why certain environments drain you, and why certain dreams keep coming back, no matter how many times you try to ignore them. This self-awareness is impossible to gain in a crowded life. Growth requires space. Healing requires silence. Clarity requires distance. When you spend time alone, you give yourself the rare opportunity to face your truth, to accept your flaws without fear, to celebrate your strengths without needing approval, and to rebuild your identity based on who you truly are, not who others have shaped you to be. You stop living through borrowed beliefs and start building your life from a place of authenticity, depth, and intentionality. This is why solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is self-discovery, and the more time you spend with yourself, the more you uncover a version of you that feels real, grounded, peaceful, and powerful. 2. Emotional freedom begins when you stop depending on people. There is a quiet kind of strength that only develops when you learn to stand on your own feet emotionally. Most people never experience it because they spend their entire lives attaching their happiness to someone else's behavior. If people treat them well, they feel good. If people ignore them, they break down. If someone leaves, they crumble. If someone stays, they feel worthy. Their emotional state rises and falls based on how others show up. This is the reason so many minds feel unstable, fragile, and easily shaken. They have unknowingly given strangers the power to control their inner peace. But when you walk alone, when you finally learn to enjoy your own company, everything inside you begins to shift. You no longer beg for attention. You no longer wait for someone to validate your worth. You no longer panic when someone pulls away or suddenly goes silent. You stop emotional overthinking because your stability no longer depends on unpredictable people. Instead, you build an inner world that no one can touch. You learn to sit with your emotions, understand them, guide them, and soothe them without needing someone else to hold your hand through every storm. This is emotional freedom, the ability to be whole even when people disappoint you. When you detach emotionally from the need for constant approval, you discover strength you didn't know you had. You begin to see relationships differently. You no longer tolerate people who drain you or confuse you. You stop running after those who walk away. You stop forcing connections that do not match your growth. Your peace becomes your first priority, not an afterthought. And in this new state of clarity, you realize something powerful. Most of your suffering never came from being alone. It came from expecting people to be what they were never capable of being. Solitude teaches you how to fill your own emotional cup. You learn to comfort yourself, motivate yourself, and believe in yourself without waiting for a savior. You learn to enjoy silence without feeling lonely. You start appreciating your inner world, the calm moments, the slow mornings, the peaceful nights where you are not trying to impress anyone or live up to any expectations. Your mind becomes lighter because you are no longer carrying the emotional weight of trying to be enough for others. You stop performing and you start living. In Buddhism, emotional freedom is one of the deepest forms of liberation because it frees you from the suffering caused by attachment. It doesn't mean you stop loving people. It means you stop depending on them for your sense of worth. It means your heart becomes stable like a mountain, unmoved by storms, unchanged by temporary winds, grounded no matter who comes or who leaves. You love without fear, you care without losing yourself, and you walk your path with a quiet confidence that comes only from self-understanding. This kind of emotional independence doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. It makes you peaceful. It makes you powerful. You stop reacting to every small thing. You stop taking things personally. You stop overthinking every message, every silence, every shift in someone's mood. You realize that the world around you does not control you anymore. You do. And this is the state where real happiness begins, when your peace comes from within, not from the unstable hands of other people. 3. Walking alone removes the wrong people automatically. One of the quiet miracles of life is that solitude works like a natural filter. When you begin to walk alone, when you stop seeking constant company, when you stop chasing people, when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop trying to keep everyone comfortable, you start to see the truth about who truly belongs in your life and who never did. The moment you choose your inner peace over noisy relationships, you create a space that only genuine people can enter, and this space pushes out the ones who are attached to you for the wrong reasons. Most people surround themselves with crowds not because they want connection, but because they fear silence. They fear being alone with their own thoughts. They fear their own emotions. They fear the emptiness inside them. But when you make the courageous decision to walk alone, you break this pattern. You stop giving people access to you just because you don't want to feel lonely. You stop keeping relationships out of habit. You stop entertaining people who drain your energy. Instead, you create a boundary, not by force, but through growth. As soon as you begin prioritizing yourself, people who thrive on your weakness will feel uncomfortable. Those who depended on your attention will pull back. Those who enjoyed your silence because it made you easy to manipulate will disappear. Those who only came to you to benefit from your kindness will fade away. Anyone who stayed because you were always available will slowly distance themselves when you start creating space for your own healing. Solitude exposes who was truly for you and who was only around you. This is the painful truth many avoid. Not everyone who walks with you is good for your journey. Some people are meant to be lessons, not lifelong companions. Some come to show you what you don't want. Some appear to wake you up. Some enter to test your strength. And some leave because the next chapter of your life cannot include them. But when you walk alone, you stop resisting these exits. You stop fighting to keep people who are already halfway out the door. You stop chasing closure and start accepting reality. You begin to see that losing the wrong people is not a loss. It is protection. In Buddhism, there is a teaching that says, let whatever leaves, leave. Let whatever stays, stay. What is meant for you will naturally remain. This wisdom becomes clear only when you walk alone, because solitude reveals how much energy you wasted on holding on to people who were not aligned with your path. It shows you how many times you lowered your standards just to keep someone close. It reminds you how often you ignored your own intuition just to avoid conflict. But when you finally step into your own company, when you begin valuing your inner peace, you rise above these patterns, and from that moment, anyone who does not match your growth will gently fall away. Walking alone strengthens your boundaries without you having to fight. It teaches you the power of letting things unfold naturally. It reminds you that the right people will respect your silence, support your growth, and stay even when you no longer give them constant access. They will value you, not use you. They will understand you, not drain you. They will walk beside you by choice, not out of convenience. The wrong ones will leave when your solitude becomes too uncomfortable for their intentions. And that is how you know who truly deserves a place in your life. When you walk alone, you don't lose people, you lose illusions. You don't become lonely, you become selective. You don't become cold, you become clear. And this clarity is what protects your peace, sharpens your path, and prepares you for your next level in life. 4. Solitude builds discipline, focus, and deep mental strength. There is a kind of strength that cannot be built in crowds, cannot be developed in noise, and cannot be discovered in constant companionship. It can only be forged in silence. It can only be found when you choose to walk alone. Solitude is not just the absence of people. It is the presence of your highest potential. It is the training ground where your mind sharpens, your discipline rises, and your focus becomes unbreakable. You begin to realize that the most powerful version of you is not formed in moments of comfort, but in moments where you sit with your thoughts, confront your weaknesses, and build yourself from the inside out. When you are constantly surrounded by people, your attention becomes scattered. You absorb conversations, opinions, moods, and energies that have nothing to do with your purpose. You react instead of reflect. You get distracted instead of growing. You start prioritizing social habits over personal evolution. But the moment you choose solitude, your life begins to shift. You reclaim your mental space. You stop feeding your mind with noise. You detach from the world long enough to hear your own ambitions clearly. In this stillness, life slows down, and for the first time, you understand what you truly want. Solitude builds discipline because it removes excuses. When you are alone, there is no one to blame, no one to lean on, and no one to distract you. The only person you face is yourself. You begin to see your habits with honesty, the ones that push you forward and the ones that keep you stuck. You notice how easily you waste time, how quickly your mind drifts, and how often you avoid the work that truly matters. And because solitude shows all of this without hiding anything, it forces you to build discipline. You train your mind to stay focused even without external pressure. You learn how to create structure in your day, how to keep promises to yourself, and how to remain committed even when motivation fades. This is why the strongest minds in history spent long periods in solitude. Buddha found enlightenment alone under a tree. Monks retreat into silent mountains. Wise men withdraw from society to gain clarity. They understood a truth that most people ignore. When you silence the world, your inner world becomes sharper, your thoughts become clearer, your judgment becomes wiser, and your life becomes directed by intention rather than confusion. Walking alone trains your focus in a way that nothing else can. Without noise, you can finally concentrate deeply. You can read without drifting. You can meditate without rushing. You can work without being pulled in 10 different directions. You can observe your emotions without reacting impulsively. You begin to understand that focus is a superpower, a force that transforms average people into masters of their craft. But focus only grows in silence. Only solitude gives your mind the space it needs to go deeper, think harder, and create something meaningful. Solitude also builds resilience. When you walk alone, you learn to handle challenges without running to others for support. You develop the mental toughness to sit with discomfort, to endure temporary loneliness, and to push through obstacles even when no one is cheering for you. You stop relying on the world to carry you and instead learn how to carry yourself. This inner strength becomes a shield, protecting your peace, guarding your mind, and empowering you to stay stable no matter what chaos surrounds you. And slowly, something incredible happens. You stop fearing being alone. Instead, you start craving it. You begin to realize that solitude is the place where you grow the fastest, heal the deepest, and rise the highest. You look forward to the quiet hours where you can think, create, reflect, and build. You discover that discipline is not something you fight for. It becomes something you naturally develop. Focus is no longer forced, it flows. Strength is no longer something you pretend to have. It becomes who you are. In Buddhism, solitude is described as the furnace that purifies the mind. When you are alone, you burn away distraction, attachment, ego, fear, and unnecessary noise. What remains is a clearer, calmer, and more powerful version of you. Your life becomes intentional, your habits become aligned, your thoughts become mature, your decisions become sharper. You start living with purpose instead of drifting without direction. This is why walking alone is not a weakness, it is training. It is the warrior's path. It is the monk's path. It is the creator's path. It is the path of anyone who wants to rise above the average and step into a life of true mastery. Solitude doesn't just change you, it rebuilds you. It shapes your mind, strengthens your will, stabilizes your emotions, and prepares you for everything life will place before you. When you embrace solitude, you unlock your deepest mental strength. You discover that the world cannot break a person who has already built themselves from within. 5. You learn to create your own happiness. There comes a point in your journey when you realize that the happiness you have been chasing was never truly yours. For years, you might have tied your joy to people's attention, their approval, their presence, their moods, and their behavior. You felt happy when they showed love, and you felt broken when they withdrew it. You felt alive when they stayed close, and you felt empty when they distanced themselves. You believed your joy was something others could give you or take away. But the moment you choose to walk alone, everything begins to change. Solitude teaches you one of the deepest truths of life. Happiness is not something you receive, it is something you create. It grows from within, not from the hands of others. It comes from understanding yourself, from listening to your needs, from honoring your peace, and from building a life that matches your values rather than the expectations of the world. When you spend time alone, you begin to discover simple joys that were always there but ignored because you were too busy running after people. You start finding comfort in silence, strength in stillness, and peace in your own rhythm. You begin to appreciate small routines, morning sunlight through your window, the taste of your tea or coffee, a slow walk, a deep breath, the sound of your thoughts settling into calm. These simple moments become treasures that no one can take away from you. You realize that happiness doesn't have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes it is gentle, quiet, and rooted in the smallest pieces of everyday life. When you walk alone, you stop expecting others to fix your emptiness. You stop waiting for messages, calls, and attention to feel valued. You stop relying on the unstable emotions of people to determine your worth. Instead, you learn to fill your own emotional cup. You begin supporting yourself the way you once wished others would support you. You comfort your own heart instead of waiting for someone to notice your pain. You motivate yourself instead of waiting for encouragement. You celebrate your progress instead of expecting recognition. This is where real happiness is born. Not from being loved by others, but from learning to love the person you are becoming. In solitude, you begin to understand that so much of your suffering came from giving responsibility for your happiness to people who were never meant to carry it. You expected others to make you feel complete. You expected relationships to erase your wounds. You expected companionship to fill your inner void, but happiness built on dependency is fragile. It collapses the moment someone disappoints you or walks away. Happiness built on yourself, however, becomes unbreakable. You start realizing that peace comes from boundaries, not from people-pleasing. It comes from self-respect, not from trying to fit into every circle. It comes from choosing your energy wisely, not from sacrificing yourself to keep others satisfied. When you walk alone, you learn that your happiness grows when you protect your mental space. When you choose activities that nourish your soul, when you spend time doing things that bring you closer to your true self. And you begin to experience something rare, the kind of happiness that doesn't disappear when someone leaves, because it wasn't built on them, it was built on you. In Buddhism, the greatest form of joy is called inner contentment, the peace that comes when your heart no longer depends on external conditions to feel whole. This state is not small or subtle. It is powerful. It frees you from emotional chaos, from constant disappointment, and from the fear of being alone. That fear transforms into strength. The silence transforms into clarity. The solitude transforms into self-love. You begin to see that you don't need more people to be happy. You need more presence within yourself. You also start recognizing patterns. How often you gave up your happiness just to keep someone close. How often you ignored your own needs just to avoid conflict. How often you let others control how you felt about yourself. Solitude helps you break these patterns slowly, gently, and completely. It allows you to rewire your mind and rebuild your emotional world from the ground up. Over time, you start feeling something new, a steady, quiet, peaceful happiness that doesn't rush, doesn't beg, doesn't cling, and doesn't collapse. You feel lighter, you feel clearer, you feel more in control of your inner world than ever before. And the most beautiful part is this: once you learn to create your own happiness, no one can ever take it away from you again. Walking alone becomes a blessing. It becomes the space where you heal, grow, discover, and transform. It becomes the birthplace of a happiness that is yours alone, deep, lasting, and untouchable. 6. Silence helps you hear life more clearly. There is a kind of silence that does not feel empty, does not feel lonely, and does not feel cold. It feels like truth. It feels like clarity. It feels like the world finally slowing down so your soul can breathe again. Most people run from silence because they fear what they might hear inside it. They distract themselves with noise, conversations, social media, entertainment, and constant stimulation because facing their own thoughts feels overwhelming. But when you walk alone, when you willingly choose solitude over noise, silence becomes your greatest teacher. It begins to reveal things about life, about yourself, and about the people around you with a clarity that cannot be found anywhere else. In silence, your mind stops rushing. Your thoughts stop colliding. Your emotions stop spilling everywhere. The chaos you carry inside finally has room to settle. You begin to notice patterns you have ignored for years, the habits that keep hurting you, the relationships that drain your energy, the dreams you've been postponing, the wounds you never healed, the truths you pretended not to see. Silence forces you to confront your life honestly, without filters, excuses, or illusions. It shows you everything pure and unedited. This is why silence is uncomfortable for many. It exposes reality. It removes the distractions you used to hide behind. It brings your real emotions to the surface, but what feels heavy at first eventually becomes liberating. Because the truth you avoid becomes the weight you carry. When you face it, you free yourself. Silence doesn't just reveal personal truths, it reveals the truth about others. When you stop talking so much, you start observing more. You begin to notice people's intentions, their patterns, their energy, the way they respect you, or the way they only show up when they need something. You become more aware of who listens to understand and who listens to respond. You see who values your presence and who only values your usefulness. Silence sharpens your intuition until it becomes almost impossible for someone to fool you. When you walk alone and embrace silence, your mind naturally becomes wiser. You stop reacting impulsively. You stop letting temporary emotions shape permanent decisions. You start responding with calm, with clarity, and with understanding instead of anger or confusion. You begin to realize that many battles do not need your reaction. Many arguments do not need your voice. Many situations dissolve on their own when you remain still. Silence becomes your strength, not your weakness. In Buddhism, silence is seen as a sacred space where wisdom grows. The mind becomes like a still lake, calm, clear, and reflective. In that calmness, you begin to hear life speak. You notice how your body reacts to people, who brings peace and who brings anxiety. You notice how your heart feels after certain conversations, who lifts you and who drains you. You notice what environments make your soul feel alive and which ones suffocate you. You become aware of the difference between what you want and what you truly need. All of these insights come not from talking, but from listening to your intuition, to your body, to the energy around you, and to the quiet voice inside that always knew the truth. Silence also reconnects you with your inner guidance. You begin to trust your own judgment instead of constantly seeking advice or approval. You stop asking others what you should do with your life and start listening to the answers already inside you. You start recognizing the signals the universe has been giving you, the people it removed, the opportunities it sent, the lessons it repeated, the doors it closed to redirect you, the moments of discomfort it used to push you higher. Silence makes you spiritually sensitive. You begin to feel the rhythm of your destiny more clearly. And in this process, something beautiful happens. You stop fearing silence. You stop running from your own thoughts. You stop avoiding the stillness that once made you restless. Instead, you look forward to it. You crave it. You find comfort in it. Because silence becomes a sanctuary where you repair yourself, where you understand yourself, where you become kinder to your own mind. Life becomes easier when you stop drowning in noise. Decisions become clearer. Emotions become balanced. Relationships become more authentic. You begin to prioritize peace over drama, clarity over confusion, alignment over validation. You learn that silence is not the absence of life, but the presence of your deepest truth. And once you begin to hear life clearly, you stop letting the world blind you with unnecessary noise. Walking alone gives you access to this silence. And this silence gives you access to a higher version of yourself, the version who thinks clearly, moves intentionally, loves wisely, and sees the world exactly as it is. Silence doesn't weaken you. It strengthens you. It sharpens your mind. It protects your energy. It reveals your path. And most importantly, it reminds you that everything you are seeking outside already exists within you, waiting for you to sit quietly long enough to hear it. 7. Walking alone leads you to your true path. There comes a moment in every person's life when they begin to feel a quiet discomfort inside, a soft but persistent feeling that they are not living the life they were meant to live. At first, they ignore it. They distract themselves with people, conversations, routines, responsibilities, and expectations. They cling to familiar circles, even when those circles keep them small. They stay in environments that drain their energy because leaving feels difficult. They follow paths that everyone approves of, but their heart silently rejects. And for a long time, they convince themselves that this is enough, that this is the life they must accept. But deep down, a voice keeps whispering, "There is more for you. There is a path that belongs only to you. You were not born to live a borrowed life." Most people never hear this voice clearly because they are surrounded by too much noise. They never get the chance to discover their true path because their mind is constantly shaped by others, their family's expectations, society's standards, their friends' opinions, and the pressure to fit in. Yet the truth is simple and uncomfortable. You cannot find your true path while walking with the wrong crowd. You cannot understand your purpose while trying to please everyone. You cannot become who you were meant to be while staying surrounded by people who benefit from your confusion. Walking alone becomes the turning point. The moment you choose solitude, something powerful starts to shift inside you. The opinions of others lose their weight. The pressure to conform begins to fade. The noise that once controlled your decisions slowly grows distant. And in that newfound quiet, you start hearing yourself clearly. Your real thoughts, your real dreams, your real desires, your real identity. You realize that for the first time, you are living with yourself, not through others. When you walk alone, you begin to understand what actually matters to you. You see what kind of life makes your spirit feel alive. You notice which habits are destroying you. You recognize which relationships are blocking your growth. You feel which environments drain your energy. You become aware of which dreams refuse to die inside you. No matter how many times you bury them, you begin to feel a deep alignment, something you never felt when you were trying to fit in. This alignment is your compass, the direction of your true path. Walking alone also reveals how many choices you made out of fear, fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of being alone, fear of disappointing others. Solitude exposes these fears. It shows you how often you betrayed your own soul just to make others comfortable. But instead of making you feel guilty, this realization frees you, because now you can finally choose differently. You can choose yourself. With every step you take alone, you begin to shed old identities, the people pleaser, the overthinker, the approval seeker, the follower, the one who felt unworthy, the one who doubted their capabilities. These versions of you fall away naturally because solitude gives you no space to hide behind them. You must face yourself honestly, which becomes the foundation for building a stronger, wiser, and more authentic version of yourself. In Buddhism, walking alone is not loneliness. It is awakening. It is the journey inward where you stop living a life shaped by external forces and begin living a life shaped by your inner truth. The Buddha taught that liberation begins the moment you stop seeking direction from the world and begin seeking direction from your own awareness. When you walk alone, you step into this awareness. You stop wandering blindly and begin moving intentionally, and then something incredible happens. The path that once seemed unclear begins to reveal itself. Opportunities that match your soul start appearing. Ideas begin forming. A clearer vision of your future emerges. People who align with your growth enter your life effortlessly because you are no longer hiding who you truly are. You start attracting everything that belongs to your spirit, not your fears. Life begins to feel lighter, more meaningful, and more connected. Walking alone also develops an unshakable confidence. You stop needing others to validate your choices because you trust your own judgment. You stop seeking approval because you are no longer insecure about your direction. You stop fearing rejection because you realize that your path doesn't require everyone to understand it. You stop feeling lost because your inner guidance becomes stronger than the noise around you. Eventually, solitude becomes a sacred space, a space where you return to recharge, realign, and reconnect with your purpose. You no longer fear being alone because it is in that aloneness that you grow, transform, and rise. You realize that your true path was never meant to be crowded. It was always meant for you, and you alone. When you walk alone, you discover a powerful truth. The right path does not need followers. It needs courage. Your courage, your discipline, your clarity, your silence, your inner strength. And when you finally choose that path, your life begins to move in a way it never could before. You stop surviving and start living. You stop drifting and start becoming. You stop searching and start aligning. Walking alone doesn't take you away from life. It leads you directly into the life you were meant to live. Your best life begins the moment you stop waiting for someone to walk with you and start walking toward your destiny on your own. 8. The more you rely on yourself, the more life opens for you. There comes a moment in your journey when you finally realize that relying on others has quietly limited your growth. Not because people are bad, and not because they don't care, but because depending on the outside world for emotional strength, direction, or confidence keeps you trapped in a smaller version of yourself. You begin to see that every time you waited for someone to guide you, you delayed your own progress. Every time you waited for support, you weakened your ability to support yourself. Every time you depended on others to feel secure, you forgot how powerful you were designed to be. And it is only when you start relying on yourself, fully, courageously, and consistently, that life begins to open its deeper doors for you. When you rely on yourself, you build a foundation that no one can shake. You stop making decisions out of fear, insecurity, or confusion because you begin to trust your inner wisdom. You stop asking the world to tell you who you are and start defining yourself through your actions, your discipline, and your self-awareness. You begin to understand that your life is shaped by your choices, not by what others do or fail to do. You no longer wait for encouragement, motivation, or reassurance. Instead, you become the source of those things. And that shift, stepping into your own power, changes everything. Self-reliance does not mean isolation. It means inner strength. It means learning to stand on your own emotional legs, so even if everyone leaves, you remain stable. It means creating a mindset so solid that temporary disappointments don't destroy you. It means building resilience so that setbacks become lessons instead of tragedies. Most importantly, it means recognizing that the responsibility for your life, your happiness, your healing, and your growth belongs to you alone. When you begin to rely on yourself, you instantly reduce emotional suffering. You stop expecting others to show up exactly the way you hope. You stop feeling abandoned when people change or walk away. You stop being hurt by inconsistency or unpredictability because your stability no longer comes from them, it comes from you. That shift creates emotional freedom, a state where your inner world stays peaceful regardless of who enters or leaves your life. In solitude, self-reliance becomes easier because there are fewer distractions. You see your habits more clearly. You recognize how often you avoided responsibility by leaning on others. You understand the ways in which you looked for shortcuts to avoid facing your own weaknesses. You realize how much potential you've held back because you were too afraid to go after your dreams alone. And as all of this becomes clear, something powerful happens. You stop running from responsibility and start embracing it. You begin to see responsibility as freedom, not burden. It becomes the path that leads you into the strongest version of yourself. The more you rely on yourself, the more your confidence grows. You stop doubting your abilities because you start proving to yourself that you can handle life. Every challenge you face alone becomes a victory. Every problem you solve strengthens your belief in your own capacity. Every moment you choose discipline over excuses reinforces your trust in your own strength, and soon your confidence becomes unshakable, not because you never fail, but because you know you can rise again every single time. Self-reliance also increases clarity. When you are not influenced by too many voices, you can finally hear your own truth. You understand what kind of life you want to build. You recognize what type of person you want to become. You identify the habits you need to change and the actions you must take. You begin moving with intention instead of drifting without direction. Every step you take becomes aligned with who you are and who you want to be. But perhaps the most beautiful part of relying on yourself is the way life responds to it. When you become responsible, disciplined, and self-directed, the universe begins to open doors that were previously hidden. Opportunities come to those who move, not those who wait. Life favors people who take ownership of their path. You start meeting people who respect your independence, who value your growth, and who support your direction, not because you need them, but because you have become someone who attracts what is aligned. You no longer cling to relationships out of fear, nor do you settle for people who treat you poorly. You know your worth because you built it yourself. In Buddhism, self-reliance is considered a form of spiritual maturity. It means learning to walk with your inner guidance, not blindly following the world. It means understanding that peace comes from discipline, clarity comes from reflection, and wisdom comes from experience. It means becoming your own teacher, your own healer, your own warrior. This doesn't push people away. It elevates the quality of people who come into your life. When you rely on yourself, you stop attracting chaos and instead draw in minds that value peace, clarity, and growth. The more you rely on yourself, the more fearless you become. You stop waiting for the perfect time because you understand that the moment you decide to move is the perfect moment. You stop hesitating because you recognize that hesitation is another form of self-doubt. You stop fearing failure because you know you can recover. You stop fearing loneliness because you have already mastered solitude. You stop fearing change because you finally trust your ability to adapt and rise. And eventually, something extraordinary happens. You begin to feel a sense of inner power that no one can give you and no one can take away. You feel grounded. You feel capable. You feel connected to your purpose. You feel aligned with your path. You feel that your life finally belongs to you, not to the expectations of others. You become the author of your own story. Self-reliance is not about being alone. It is about being strong enough to walk your path even if you must walk it alone for a while. And once you reach that level of strength, life cannot intimidate you anymore. People cannot break you. Circumstances cannot control you. And fear can no longer stop you. Because you finally understand the truth. Everything you were searching for in others was waiting to be built inside you. 9. Protect your peace at all costs. Not everyone deserves access to you. There comes a point in your growth when you begin to understand that your peace is the most valuable thing you own. More valuable than success. More valuable than relationships. More valuable than appearing strong in front of the world. Peace is the foundation that holds your mind steady, your emotions balanced, your spirit grounded, and your life aligned. Without peace, everything collapses. With peace, everything becomes clear. But peace is not something the world gives freely. It is something you must protect, fiercely and intentionally, especially when you begin walking alone. When you start valuing your inner world, you begin to notice how easily your peace can be disturbed. A small argument leaves you drained for hours. A careless comment from someone with no self-awareness affects your mood. A person's negativity enters your space and fills your mind like smoke. A toxic presence forces you into emotional exhaustion. Even silence becomes heavy when someone with chaotic energy steps into your life. This is when you realize that your peace requires boundaries, boundaries that many people will not understand, approve of, or respect, but your peace is not up for negotiation. Walking alone teaches you something that crowds can never teach. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone deserves your time, your energy, your vulnerability, your attention, or your presence. Some people only enter your life to drain your strength. Some come to disturb your stability. Some come to take what they cannot give. Some appear peaceful on the outside, but carry storms on the inside that they want to drop into your life. And some people are simply not meant to sit at the table of your peace because their behavior, their mindset, or their intentions do not match the life you are trying to build. When you begin protecting your peace, you start to see people clearly, not through emotions, not through attachment, not through fear of losing them, but through truth. You notice who brings calmness to your life and who brings confusion. You notice who respects your boundaries and who constantly pushes against them. You notice who listens, who cares, and who pretends. You notice who supports your growth and who feels threatened by it. You notice who makes your life easier and who makes it more difficult. This awareness becomes one of your greatest strengths. In solitude, this clarity becomes sharper. You observe without reacting. You feel without being overwhelmed. You understand without forcing explanations. You learn to detach from people emotionally so you can finally see them for who they really are, not who you wish they were. And when you see clearly, you begin removing access, not out of anger, not out of ego, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. Protecting your peace often requires letting go of relationships that create more pain than healing, letting go of friendships that never evolve, letting go of people who repeatedly show you they cannot be trusted with your heart, letting go of conversations that always drain your spirit, letting go of environments that suffocate your growth, and letting go of patterns that disturb your emotional balance. This letting go is not easy. It requires courage, discipline, and emotional maturity. But it is necessary, because your peace is the soil in which your life grows. If the soil is poisoned, everything that grows in it suffers. Many people remain stuck because they keep allowing their peace to be destroyed by the same individuals over and over again. They keep forgiving behavior that never changes. They keep returning to places that broke them. They keep entertaining conversations that damage their focus. They keep tolerating disrespect in the name of loyalty. They keep confusing loneliness with peace, and in doing so, they lose themselves. But walking alone breaks this cycle. It teaches you that loneliness is temporary, but peace is permanent. And choosing permanent peace over temporary companionship is one of the highest forms of wisdom. In Buddhism, protecting your peace is a spiritual responsibility. You are responsible for the state of your mind. You are responsible for the people you allow into your inner circle. You are responsible for the environment you cultivate. You are responsible for the words you absorb and the energy you entertain. No one else can guard your inner world for you. And when you finally take that responsibility seriously, your life begins to transform. You start declining invitations that drain you. You stop explaining your boundaries. You become selective with who has access to your emotions. You begin valuing silence over forced conversations. You pull away from drama without announcing it. You choose solitude over fake connections. You stop pleasing and start protecting. You no longer chase anyone. You choose yourself. People may call this cold. They may call it distant. They may say you have changed. But what they don't understand is that peace changes you. Silence changes you. Self-awareness changes you. Walking alone changes you. And when you end the war within yourself, you lose interest in battles outside yourself. The more you protect your peace, the more powerful you become. Your mind becomes sharper because it is no longer distracted by chaos. Your heart becomes lighter because it is no longer carrying unnecessary people. Your decisions become clearer because they are no longer influenced by emotional noise. Your life becomes more meaningful because you are no longer living for others. Protecting your peace becomes the key that unlocks the best version of you. Eventually, you begin to see your peace as sacred. You stop giving access to anyone who does not respect it. You don't tolerate unpredictable behavior. You don't allow people to manipulate your emotions. You don't get pulled into unnecessary conflicts. You don't let others bring their storms into your calm. You realize that your peace is not something you guard once. It is something you guard every day. And because of this, your life begins to open in ways it never could before. You attract better people because chaos no longer feels familiar. You make better decisions because your mind is not overwhelmed. You grow faster because your energy is protected. You begin to love yourself deeper because you see how much effort it takes to protect your inner world. You rise higher because nothing is pulling you backwards anymore. Walking alone leads you to your true self. Protecting your peace keeps you there. And once you reach that level of inner stability, your life becomes something beautiful, something you create with intention, with clarity, with purpose, and with a profound understanding that not everyone deserves access to the person you are becoming. 10. The journey within is the greatest journey you will ever take. There is a journey every human must eventually face. A journey that does not involve distant cities, beautiful landscapes, or long roads. It is not a journey you take with luggage or vehicles, and it is not a journey you can share with others. It is the journey within yourself. The quiet, profound, life-altering journey into your inner world, into your thoughts, your wounds, your desires, your fears, your patterns, your spirit, your consciousness. Most people avoid this journey because it demands honesty, courage, self-awareness, and emotional maturity. It requires you to face parts of yourself you spent years ignoring, but the moment you walk alone, truly walk alone, this inner journey begins naturally, inevitably, and beautifully. When you finally turn inward, you start seeing yourself clearly for the first time. All the masks you wore for years begin to feel heavy. All the roles you performed to be accepted, to be loved, to be respected, start falling away. All the layers of identity created by society, family, friends, and expectations dissolve slowly. You are left with the real you, raw, unfiltered, and honest. At first, this can feel terrifying because it shows you parts of yourself you denied or suppressed. But in this vulnerability lies your greatest transformation. The journey within forces you to confront your emotional wounds, the rejection that shaped your insecurities, the betrayal that made you afraid to trust, the abandonment that taught you to cling, the criticism that made you doubt yourself, the comparisons that made you feel unworthy. These wounds have been shaping your behavior for years without your awareness. In silence, in solitude, these wounds rise to the surface, not to hurt you, but to be healed. You begin to understand the origins of your fears, the roots of your patterns, and the reasons for your emotional reactions. Healing does not happen through avoiding pain. It happens through understanding it. When you walk alone and look inward, you realize that everything you thought was wrong with you was actually unhealed pain expressing itself. Your hesitation, your overthinking, your emotional triggers, your dependency on validation, your fear of being alone, none of these were signs of weakness. They were signs of someone who carried themselves through storms without the guidance they needed. And instead of judging yourself, you begin comforting yourself. You learn to forgive yourself. You learn to rewrite the stories you once believed about who you are. The journey within also reveals your hidden strengths, strengths you never noticed because the world rarely encouraged you to see them. You see how resilient you are for surviving everything you thought would break you. You notice your ability to rise after disappointment, your capacity to care deeply, your sensitivity to energy, your intuitive understanding of people, your creativity, your wisdom, your determination, your self-control. These strengths were always there, but they only become visible when the noise of the world fades and the light of awareness shines within you. As you continue walking alone, you begin exploring your aspirations, not the dreams others planted in you, but the dreams that emerged from your soul. You rediscover passions you abandoned because they didn't make sense to others. You reconnect with a version of yourself that society dimmed. You begin to feel alive again, not because of external achievements, but because you are reconnecting with your inner truth. You realize that the life you desire is not somewhere outside waiting to be found. It is within you, waiting to be expressed. In Buddhism, this inner journey is described as awakening, the moment you stop living unconsciously and start living with awareness. Awareness is not simply noticing things around you. It is understanding the nature of your mind, the patterns of your thoughts, the illusions of your ego, and the quiet signals of your intuition. Awareness allows you to separate truth from fear, desire from distraction, purpose from noise. This clarity becomes your inner compass, guiding you toward decisions that align with your soul rather than your insecurities. The journey within also transforms your relationship with life. You stop expecting perfection. You stop resisting change. You stop fearing uncertainty. You begin to trust the natural flow of life, the coming and going of people, the rise and fall of emotions, the creation and destruction of circumstances. Instead of trying to control everything, you learn to align yourself with the rhythm of existence. You understand that nothing meant for you will pass you, and nothing that passes you was meant to stay. This acceptance brings a level of peace that no external achievement can ever provide. As you deepen your inner journey, something remarkable begins to happen. Your outer world shifts. Because when you change internally, the world responds differently. You no longer tolerate disrespect because you finally respect yourself. You no longer chase after people because you have found peace within you. No longer fear being misunderstood because you understand yourself. You no longer feel lost because you have discovered your own direction. This is not magic. It is alignment. When your inner world becomes stable, your outer world begins to reflect that stability. The journey within also teaches you emotional independence. You stop needing constant reassurance because you learn how to comfort your own heart. You stop being controlled by emotions because you learn how to observe them instead of being overwhelmed by them. You stop feeling threatened by loneliness because solitude becomes your teacher. You stop seeking happiness from the outside because you begin cultivating happiness from the inside. And this inner stability becomes one of your greatest strengths. Eventually, as you continue walking alone, your inner journey becomes your greatest source of freedom. You free yourself from old identities. You free yourself from the opinions of others. You free yourself from the pressure to be someone you are not. You free yourself from the emotional chaos you once carried. You free yourself from expectations that never belonged to you. You free yourself from the need to fit in. You become whole within yourself. And that is the purpose of the inner journey. Not to change who you are, but to return you to who you have always been beneath the noise, the trauma, the expectations, and the conditioning. You discover a version of yourself that feels like home. Peaceful, wise, confident, grounded, authentic, and deeply connected to life. The greatest journey is not the journey around the world. The greatest journey is the journey inward. It is the journey that reveals your truth, heals your wounds, strengthens your spirit, and aligns you with your destiny. It is the journey that no one can take for you, and no one can take away from you. And once you complete this journey, even partially, you never see life the same way again. Walking alone begins the journey. The journey within completes it. And in that completion, you finally become the person you were always meant to be. 11. When you walk alone, you finally break the illusion of who you should be. There is a silent pressure that follows most people throughout their entire lives, the pressure to become who others expect them to be. You are shaped by childhood expectations, family traditions, societal rules, cultural pressure, and the constant fear of judgment. From a young age, you are told what success should look like, what happiness should look like, what relationships should look like, what your personality should be, and even what dreams are acceptable. Without realizing it, you begin living inside a mold that was never designed for your soul. You adapt yourself to fit into systems that do not match your spirit. You begin to carry identities that were placed on you, not chosen by you. You become who you were told to be, not who you truly are. This burden feels normal when you are surrounded by people who reinforce it every day. You follow routines that do not inspire you, remain in environments that drain you, and maintain relationships that do not reflect your values, simply because stepping away feels frightening. But when you walk alone, something remarkable happens. The illusion breaks. All the false identities you built over the years begin to crack under the weight of your true self trying to emerge. The silence of solitude reveals a truth that noise always hides. Your life does not belong to anyone's expectations. Your destiny is not a group project, and the person you were meant to become has been waiting beneath the surface this entire time. Walking alone forces you to confront the difference between your conditioned self and your authentic self. The conditioned self is the version of you shaped by external forces, your upbringing, your culture, your influences, your environment, your fears. It is the version that learned to please, to obey, to impress, to seek approval, and to avoid discomfort. But your authentic self is deeper. It is the you that existed before the world told you who to be. It is the you that knows your true passions, your true purpose, your true nature, your true values, and your true direction. The more time you spend alone, the more these two selves separate, and this separation becomes the beginning of liberation. When you walk alone, you begin noticing the lives you outgrew, jobs that no longer fulfill you, people who no longer align with your growth, habits that no longer match your maturity, and dreams that no longer inspire you. You realize that so much of what you chased was rooted in fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failing publicly, fear of disappointing those around you, and fear of being misunderstood. But solitude gives you the courage to question everything. Why do I want this? Who am I doing this for? Does this path truly belong to me? Have I been living for others instead of myself? This questioning is uncomfortable because it dismantles the identity you spent years building. But it is necessary. You cannot step into your real life while clinging to a borrowed identity. You cannot awaken while remaining asleep to your own truth. You cannot grow into your highest self while being trapped in the expectations of others. Walking alone becomes the fertile ground for this transformation because it removes the distractions that kept you numb, blind, and disconnected from yourself. As the illusion breaks, you begin confronting your own fears. The fear of being different, the fear of being alone, the fear of being judged, the fear of not being good enough. These fears once held enormous power over you, but in solitude you begin to understand them. You realize that every fear you carried came from conditioning, not from truth. The fear of being alone disappears once you experience the peace within solitude. The fear of judgment fades when you stop caring about opinions that add no value to your life. The fear of being different dissolves when you finally see that your uniqueness is your greatest strength. And the fear of not being good enough disappears when you realize that comparing yourself to others was the root of your insecurity. The more deeply you walk into your inner world, the more you realize how much of your suffering came from resisting your own truth. You suffered because you tried to obey expectations that suffocated your spirit. You suffered because you forced yourself into roles that never fit you. You suffered because you silenced your own desires to keep peace with others. You suffered because you carried identities that were heavy, unnatural, and deeply disconnected from your soul's path. But walking alone gives you the courage to finally let go. You begin releasing every identity that was imposed on you. The one who always tries to be perfect, the one who never says no, the one who hides their emotions, the one who avoids conflict, the one who sacrifices themselves for approval. As you let go, something incredible happens. You begin discovering who you truly are beneath all the layers. You start reconnecting with passions you once abandoned because they didn't seem practical. You rediscover talents you buried because no one encouraged them. You reconnect with dreams you pushed aside because they didn't fit society's definition of success. You start feeling alive again, not because of external achievements, but because you are finally living in alignment with your inner truth. Your spirit feels lighter, your energy becomes stronger, your decisions become clearer. For the first time in years, you begin recognizing yourself. In Buddhism, this process is called returning to the original mind, the pure awareness that existed before conditioning. It is the moment you awaken from the illusion of who you should be and step into who you truly are. This awakening does not happen through external validation. It happens through inner clarity, and inner clarity comes from walking alone. Walking alone removes the pressure to perform. You no longer try to impress. You no longer compare. You no longer seek applause. You no longer betray yourself for acceptance. You stop chasing a version of life that was never yours. You begin building a life based on authenticity, simplicity, clarity, and purpose. And the more authentic you become, the more peaceful your life feels. Your mind becomes quieter. Your heart becomes calmer. Your days become more intentional. You begin attracting opportunities that match your truth instead of struggling to maintain things that were never aligned with your spirit. Eventually, a powerful realization emerges. The person you were always meant to be was never out there. They were always inside you, buried beneath years of noise, expectations, and illusions. Walking alone is not about distancing yourself from the world. It is about returning to yourself. It is about creating enough silence to hear the truth your spirit has been whispering for years. You were never meant to live as a copy. You were meant to live as yourself. The greatest freedom in life is not escaping people. It is escaping the false identity you created to please them. The greatest strength is not walking with a crowd. It is walking alone with clarity. And the greatest victory is not becoming who others want. It is returning to who you truly are. 12. The more you grow alone, the less the old world can touch you. There comes a stage in your inner evolution when you begin to notice something subtle but unmistakably powerful. The old world you once lived in, the people, the habits, the expectations, the conversations, the emotional triggers, the chaos, the noise, no longer has the same effect on you. Situations that once controlled your mood now feel distant. Words that once hurt you now pass through you without leaving a wound. People who once drained your energy no longer have access to your inner space, and the version of you that once reacted, panicked, worried, or depended on others begins to disappear. This shift does not happen suddenly. It happens slowly, silently, and naturally when you walk alone and grow from within. At first, solitude feels like a pause from the world, but as you spend more time alone, solitude becomes a detox. Every day you spend in silence removes a layer of conditioning. Every moment you sit with yourself removes a layer of fear. Every deep breath in solitude removes a layer of emotional clutter. And as these layers dissolve, you begin to see reality with new eyes. You become sensitive to what drains your mind. You become aware of who lowers your spirit. You begin noticing the subtle emotional footprints people leave on you after each interaction. This awareness becomes the beginning of your transformation. When you grow alone, you develop a strength that is not loud or aggressive. It is quiet, steady, and unshakable. It is the type of strength that cannot be faked, borrowed, or performed. It comes from facing your thoughts without distraction, carrying your struggles without complaining, healing your wounds without seeking sympathy, and learning to navigate your emotions with wisdom instead of fear. This strength becomes a shield without you even trying to create one. Your energy begins to protect itself. Your mind becomes difficult to disturb. Your peace becomes harder to break. And suddenly, the world that once overwhelmed you begins to lose its power. People who used to trigger you will seem predictable instead of threatening. Situations that once controlled you will feel small compared to your inner clarity. Disappointments that once collapsed you will become lessons instead of tragedies. Rejections that once shattered you will feel like redirection instead of personal failure. Arguments that once consumed your mind will feel unnecessary, even childish. This is what it means to grow alone, not isolation, but evolution. In your solitude, you begin to understand that most of your suffering came from giving the world too much access to your mind. You allowed people to influence your thoughts, your worth, your direction, and your emotional state. You allowed situations to define your day. You allowed temporary emotions to shape permanent decisions. But when you walk alone long enough, you reclaim your inner space. You reclaim ownership of your mind. You reclaim control over your reactions. And once you take back this power, the old world, the world of emotional chaos, no longer holds you hostage. The more you grow, the more you detach from unnecessary noise. Not because you stop caring, but because you finally understand what deserves your care. You stop trying to fix people who refuse to fix themselves. You stop trying to convince people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop offering energy to those who only come to take. You stop repeating old emotional patterns that lead nowhere. You stop abandoning yourself just to feel included. This inner detachment is not coldness, it is clarity. And clarity changes everything. With clarity, you see that many of the attachments you held onto were rooted in fear, not love. Many of the friendships you maintained were maintained out of habit, not alignment. Many of the conversations you had were driven by emptiness, not connection. Many of the dreams you pursued were influenced by others, not born from your soul. Solitude brings all of this to the surface, and once you see clearly, you cannot unsee. You cannot go back to living unconsciously. You cannot return to the old world because you no longer belong there. In Buddhism, this phase is known as inner transcendence, the moment your consciousness rises above the noise of the world. You still live in the world, but you are no longer controlled by it. You still interact with people, but you're no longer defined by their behavior. You still face challenges, but you're no longer shaken by them. You rise above without needing to distance yourself physically. Your mind simply moves to a higher level of understanding. This shift creates a new kind of peace within you, a peace that does not depend on circumstances, a peace that is not affected by opinions, a peace that stays steady even when life becomes unpredictable. This peace acts like a protective field around your spirit. You don't force it. It simply grows from self-awareness, discipline, healing, and solitude. And then an even deeper realization emerges. The old world was not wrong. It was simply too small for the person you were becoming. You realize that you have outgrown certain behaviors. Overthinking, people-pleasing, emotional dependence, seeking validation, chasing approval. You have outgrown certain environments. Places that suffocated your energy. conversations that held no meaning, routines that restricted your growth. You have outgrown certain people, not because you are better than them, but because your spirit has moved toward a different direction. And this outgrowing is not something to feel guilty about. It is a sign of evolution. Every soul that chooses the path of inner growth eventually must leave behind parts of their old life. You do not leave with resentment. You leave with understanding. You realize that you cannot take everyone with you to the next level of your journey. Some connections were meant only for certain chapters. Some relationships were meant to teach you lessons, not stay forever. Some experiences were meant to shape your inner strength, not define your identity. And once their purpose is complete, you naturally move forward. As you grow alone, you become emotionally self-sufficient. You no longer need the world to validate you. You no longer require constant reassurance. You no longer panic when someone leaves because you have learned to stay with yourself. You learn to trust your intuition, the quiet voice that guided you all along. You learn to follow your own timing instead of rushing. You learn to create a life that reflects your inner truth instead of external pressure. The more you grow alone, the more the old world loses its ability to touch you. Not because you become distant, but because you become whole. Not because you numb your emotions, but because you understand them. Not because you disconnect from life, but because you finally connect with your deeper self. And once you reach this level of inner maturity, the only direction left for you is forward, into a life that aligns with your soul, into relationships that match your energy, into environments that support your growth, and into a version of yourself that feels true, grounded, awakened, and powerful. Walking alone transforms you. Growing alone elevates you. And once you rise to this level, no old pattern, no old wound, no old environment, and no old version of yourself can ever pull you back again. There comes a moment at the end of every long journey when you stop and look back, not with regret, not with sadness, but with a quiet understanding of how far you have come. When you look behind you, you no longer see the same person you once were. You no longer see the one who was afraid to be alone, the one who depended on others for happiness, the one who felt lost without company, the one who tolerated chaos to avoid silence, the one who lived according to expectations instead of truth. All of those versions of yourself were necessary. They carried you through seasons of life that shaped your resilience, but they were never meant to stay forever. Walking alone has changed you in ways the world cannot see, but you can feel deeply within. Something inside you has shifted, quietly, steadily, permanently. You have developed an inner strength that does not need an audience, an emotional stability that does not crumble under pressure, a clarity that is not shaken by noise, and a self-awareness that acts like a compass guiding your life. These qualities were not given to you by anyone. You built them through solitude, reflection, discipline, and courage. You learned that being alone is not a punishment, it is a purification. It washes away the noise that once polluted your mind. It removes the people who were not meant to walk your path. It reveals the desires that were buried under fear. It brings to the surface the dreams you were too scared to admit. It helps you understand your wounds, your strengths, and your purpose without distraction. Solitude stripped away the false layers of identity you were carrying and returned you to your most natural state, aware, present, calm, and aligned. What began as loneliness transformed into clarity. What began as silence transformed into wisdom. What began as discomfort transformed into growth. What began as distance transformed into inner peace. You discovered that happiness is something you build inside yourself, not something you chase in other people. You realized that peace is something you protect, not something you beg for. You understood that not everyone deserves access to your energy, and not everyone can walk the path you are destined to walk. You learned the power of boundaries, the importance of discipline, the beauty of solitude, and the necessity of choosing yourself, even when others don't understand. This journey taught you that your true path does not appear when you are surrounded by noise. It appears when you dare to step into silence. Your destiny does not reveal itself when you follow the crowd. It reveals itself when you walk your own road. The life meant for you cannot reach you while you are busy living for others. It arrives the moment you claim your own truth. And now, as you stand at the end of this path and the beginning of the next, you feel something you may not have felt before, grounded. There is a quiet confidence inside you, a steady calmness. A sense of direction, a trust in yourself that does not require validation. This is the effect of walking alone. It gives you back control of your life. It restores your power. It reconnects you with your inner world. It opens your mind to who you can become when you stop running from yourself. The journey does not end here. It evolves. From this point forward, you will begin to notice changes in the way you think, feel, and live. You will speak less because your mind is calm. You will react less because your emotions are stable. You will tolerate less because your standards are higher. You will impress less because you no longer seek approval. You will choose differently because you finally know your worth. You will walk forward with a clarity that cannot be shaken by noise or doubt. And as you grow into this new version of yourself, life will begin to respond. Opportunities will come that match your strength. People will appear who match your energy. Experiences will unfold that match your truth. Your outer world will shift because your inner world has changed. This is the final lesson. When you choose yourself, life finally chooses you. Your best life does not begin when others walk beside you. Your best life begins when you trust yourself enough to walk alone. And keep walking, keep growing, keep rising, keep returning to your inner truth again and again until the life you live is a reflection of the person you were always meant to become. Your journey alone is not the end. It is the beginning of everything.